This podcast is sponsored by
Terraform Development is a rising engineering design and project management company located in Flagstaff, Arizona. Co-owners Eddie Kalnemtua and Stanford Lake started the company to bring economic-related projects to rural communities like the villages of the Hopi tribe. Some of the important work done by Terraform with the Hopi tribe are Nava-Hopi Master Plan, KUYI radio station site plan, Hopi Tribal Housing Authority residential homes, and numerous other nonprofit types projects on the Hopi tribe. Terraform can be reached at 928-864-5022 or visit their website at www.terra4orm.com. That's TERRA, the number 4, ORM.com. Also sponsored by 4X Studio is a Phoenix-based design and print communications company that specializes in brand messaging, marketing communications, and creative services for small businesses, nonprofits, tribal gaming, American Indian, and corporate clients nationwide. Their professional services include integrated brand systems, strategic design, identity illustration, print, ad campaign, assist management, packaging, and event design. 4X Studio is an American Indian owned and operated by Sean Quaney. For more information, visit 4xstudio.com. That's the number 4, xstudio.com.
You are now listening to the Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. I'm your host, the 5-star, 5-diamond chef J-Man, and with me is Randolph, the red-nosed cowboy, Carl.
Good morning and happy Wednesday, everybody.
Happy Wednesday. We're coming off of the Christmas break, the holiday break. Well, I guess, honestly, I really don't know when Kwanzaa and Hanukkah occurs. So off the Christmas break.
Yeah, that's true. So how was your Christmas?
It was really good, actually. It was pretty awesome. Unfortunately, I did see some people talking on social media saying that it didn't really feel like Christmas to them, I think because of the pandemic and all the restrictions for traveling for a lot of people. But for me, we still met with my siblings and their kids, their grandkids, opened up presents, and we were all masked up, which I think was, kind of the big difference.
Yeah.
Being at Soul's house all masked up. And then after that, we went home and then kind of just relaxed and chilled, which is actually a big welcoming for us, because normally on Christmas Day we're rushing off trying to get to other people's homes and going off of 2 or 3 hours of sleep from the night previous, trying to wrap last minute gifts and trying to wait for Santa to come and making sure that him and his reindeer are taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. And my Christmas was pretty good. So and Kwa got their gifts and everything, and we decorated the tree. We decorated the tree about 2 weeks ago. And remember, I told you that we had a real tree.
Yeah,
we bought a real tree. Mm-hmm. I didn't know you had to water it almost every other day. So the little needles started falling off, and I was like wondering, why is this needles falling off? And so by the end of last week before Christmas, I had like a bald spot on my tree, and I just kept on turning the so it won't see the bald spot. I think I turned it. I think I turned it too much, and some of the needles started falling off, and luckily I had my green Sharpie with me and started just coloring the branches.
So you're trying to figure out, why is my tree broken? The needles are falling out.
My needles started falling off, and I didn't know you had to water these things. So I told you, it's been a while since I bought a real tree before.
Well, I can imagine what kind of farmer you are during the summertime, Carl. So
I rely on the clouds. That's what I rely on.
That's another reason why your sisters are probably pissed off at you all the time, that you're always cracking jokes on them on the podcast, and now you don't provide any nut money for them during the summertime.
I do. I don't water it, but I just rely on the. I don't water it. You're not supposed to water it. So
well. So today we got a special episode. We got a special guest in today.
Yeah. We do have a special guest.
And we're going to be talking about something that's, I guess, a fairly controversial topic. I think that, we kind of got some really good momentum from the previous episodes. And, I think that right now we got our most listeners on a weekly basis for season 3.
Yeah.
And so, we're hoping that, this topic is going to be something that's going to be really intriguing and engaging for a lot of folks out there. And I really think that that's going to be the case because today we're going to be talking about, I guess, quote unquote, mixed breeds.
Mixed breeds.
And so, that's kind of a terminology that you hear that's probably not so contemporary anymore. I believe probably that the PC term is multicultural. And so, a lot of our native folks, especially a lot of our relatives, do come from multicultural homes. And then we've kind of, I feel like that we've done a good job in sowing the seeds for this topic through a lot of our previous episodes where we've covered we're mostly discussing this idea of the factory settings.
Yeah, and if you're out here on Hopi, they're basically called mutts. So
Carl, as usual, Carl's opinions are not shared by all members of the Carl and J Man Say the World podcast. But, I think that this is fairly, a topic that doesn't necessarily get talked about a whole lot, especially because when you think about the larger scope of like American Indians, Native Americans, if you press play on your on some of the native podcasts that are out there, talking about this topic of identity, talking about this topic of blood quantum, I think for the most part, for the rest of Native America, that if you're a part of several tribes, that, that's kind of a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. But I think out here on Hopi, that we're kind of behind the times in things like that.
Yeah. I mean, we're like one. If you're not Hopi, then you're not Hopi at all.
Exactly. And so we've talked about that to quite an extent in a lot of the other episodes with this idea of what the factory settings are. Basically, that we are a matrilineal society and that a lot of our people out here on the reservation still believe that if your mother isn't Hopi, then technically you're also really not Hopi either.
Yeah, even if your father is Hopi and if you do a lot of things with your father in the Hopi sense, you're still not considered Hopi.
And so I think that idea kind of creates, difficulties for folks that do come from that type of background that might have be Hopi on the father's side, but not necessarily having a Hopi mother. Because I think that, for one of the things is that when you are, I guess, Hopi, whether that's through your mother or father, the fact that we do still practice a lot of our culture, that we still do practice a lot of our religion, and that, that a lot of those practices happen yearly, that more than likely that you have tasted some of those cultural practices at some point, whether you're full-blooded Hopi or not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still in this day, the 21st century, we still have that mindset of if you're a child and you want to be doing Hopi things, you have to have a Hopi mother to do these certain things like that. And if you're not, I mean, you're just going to get ridiculed in that sense that you're not Hopi, even though your father's Hopi.
Mm-hmm. And so, that really is that perspective of folks that do have that factory setting. And, and I'll admit too that, that is the way that we were raised, myself and my sisters, to have that perspective. And so, but, I do have relatives that have gone off and married non-Hopis. And so I do have, nieces and nephews that do belong to several different cultures. And, sometimes some of them are for mothers that aren't necessarily Hopi.
Yeah.
And so I think that when that dynamic comes into your home, then it kind of really, I guess, tests your perspective, or it really tests how much you truly believe in that factory setting. Because then, when you think about it, I guess from a parental perspective, right? Like I'm a parent, I'm a father. and I have children. And so when you have children, or even if you're not a parent and you think about, younger children that you truly care for, that you truly love for, whether that being from an uncle perspective or an auntie perspective, thinking about your nephews and nieces, that when you think about your children, that you want them to go through life to have the best life that they could possibly have.
Yeah.
That you don't want anybody to hurt your children. That you don't want anybody to bring any type of negativity to your children. And sometimes, unfortunately, as a result of those factory settings, that factory perspective that a lot of us do still carry, that does bring some negativity to those children. That does bring some sort of, chastising. And I guess the Hopi word, is we're always ita bumwe yuyoina. Yuyoina is to make fun of.
Yeah. To hurt, basically.
Or to hurt, yeah.
Yeah, and it is true. It is true that what J-Man is saying is that, yes, we want our children to grow up knowing that to marry a Hopi, because if you want to be Hopi, you marry a Hopi. And that's the whole idea of how Hopis think. And we still think like that nowadays. And it's not, I don't know if it's a bad thing to do that, or, it's something that, but it's just we grown up with it. So and Kwa has always taught all of us that if you want to continue with your Hopi traditions, you marry a Hopi, you have Hopi children, and that furthers on the tradition.
That's a really good point, because then for people like you and I guess just speaking from our positions and how we've been raised, is that you hear it a lot from the elders growing up as a kid, that especially as men being told that if you want Hopi children, you have to find yourself a Hopi wife. And back to our res relationship episode, that really was the message from a lot of the elders when conversing with young Carl and young J-Man, is that one day you're gonna find a woman, and the implications is that it's gonna be a Hopi woman.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have a Hopi wedding. And then you're going to have Hopi babies. And then, your babies are going to go through the process that all of us go through as Hopi people to earn their stripes, to be that, to live this Hopi life. And that's, being, to have asna by your ge'as as a baby. And then going through the ceremonial societies that are still left, to be wimka into those societies, to fulfill your role as a Hopi person.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of, the upbringing that we're taught growing up as children. And so that's something that I guess in a way is tattooed into your, or at least I branded into your brain to think. And I think that's really kind of how some of those factory settings, those perspectives really are strong within a lot of us. And then, you get to older ages, and then sometimes you do end up being with somebody other than a Hopi.
Yeah, it never works out like that, especially in the 21st century, and especially now that we have technology, we have social media, we have everything.
We have Tinder.
Yeah.
Swipe right.
We have everything at our fingertips.
Farmersonly.com.
I tried that once.
And you were kicked off.
I was kicked off of it. But we do have a lot of that. We do have a lot of that, outside world technology, which gives us the opportunity to go out and to meet new people, and to make sure that we have a cultural understanding of other people. So,
And then I think also too, what kind of makes things difficult is that, because of a lot of different things that we've talked about in, I think, some of the past episodes, some of the issues that we have out here with alcoholism and domestic abuse, that a lot of our people do unfortunately experience a lot of these community negatives, I guess, in a way that it leaves our people broken. And so when you're out there trying to pursue and find a suitable mate, that sometimes, like you said, that, the only girls that want Hopi men are the ones that'll smoke and drink with them.
Yeah.
And so if that's somebody that you don't want to be with, then, then you do find yourself looking elsewhere for a mate. And then, so, for us guys, for us men, Hopi men that do end up finding women that aren't Hopi, then it's our children that experiences a lot of, what it is that we're talking about today. Because then, like we've mentioned this before, is that for whatever reason, us Hopis, we really do like to make fun of each other.
Oh yeah.
We really like to push each other's buttons for whatever reason. And, I recall being a young kid going to the day school, and I'm pretty sure that, this is the case that's pretty consistent with a lot of younger children's upbringing, is that, we would have classmates that were part Navajo. That always seems to be the case, that they were part Navajo. And so even if it was their fathers that were Navajo, but they had Hopi mothers, they would still feel a brunt of, a lot of the I guess, yuyaina is what we would do as kids, making fun of them, calling them Navajos. And then, kind of all of that derogatory, stereotypical perspectives that we had of them that we mentioned in our Navajo and Hopi relations episode, is that, that's a lot of the names that we would call them.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the negative criticisms that we would point directly towards them. But then, you kind of think about that, that's kind of so fucked up, because then, like your children, right? Your children, and you don't really choose that, that you don't choose the life that you're given.
No,
but yet we're there, kind of poking fun at them. And, I'd like to think that, I didn't participate in that type of practice to ridicule my peers for their backgrounds or for their cultural backgrounds. But I did witness a lot of my own classmates doing that type of thing.
Oh yeah, I was probably one that was doing that, making fun of the half-breeders.
Yeah, you seem like a guy that's like that.
But yeah, I mean, it is the brunt of the force that children try to make up for their parents' mistake. I wouldn't call it a mistake, but I guess you would say a mistake in the Hopi tradition, because you're not married to a Hopi, or you're not with a Hopi woman or man. So it is kind of like that quote unquote mistake of their parents.
Yeah, you seem like a guy that has a lot of insecurities, and I think that that's where a lot of those social issues come from our people, of why we like to make fun of each other.
Exactly, and I'm probably one like the poster child of like making fun of everybody. So,
and it's I guess I didn't really realize of how much of that went on, like, because when I moved out to the city, living out in the city, I knew that we were like that towards each other. I knew that we made fun of each other a lot, but I didn't realize it to the extent until I moved home. Yeah. And it's like really any little reason to talk crap to each other, we do it.
Yep, exactly. Before we bring on our guest, let's go ahead and break for our sponsor.
Strong Ones is dedicated to exposing cultural traditions of running that exist within many cultures and tribes worldwide through running apparel. Strong Ones is an individually owned business supporting cultural running traditions and supporting local organizations within the Hopi reservation. They can be found at strongones.myshopify.com. Again, that's strongones.myshopify.com. They are also on Facebook at StrongOnes15. And we're back. And so, I think that's kind of, and I'm not too sure why we're like that. I really don't know why we're like that, why we tend to point out what's different and make that the brunt of jokes that we make towards each other.
Yeah.
Carl, you wear glasses. You're a nerd.
Oh, yeah?
Carl, cut your hair. It's too long.
Why don't you grow your hair like a real Hopi?
Okay, so I think that now is a good time to bring on our special guest.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring on our special guest here. Danielle?
Yes.
Danielle, welcome to the podcast. And so, you can give your introduction however you would like to do that. But, as we, the conversation that we had with you before we started the podcast is that, sometimes we say some things on here that aren't necessarily favorable for everybody. So basically, however you want to give your introduction.
So my name is Daniell Albert. I am half Hopi and half Navajo. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself both ways so the listeners can understand where I come from on both ends.
Sure.
So, no Agausi Yan Hopi Mapsiwa, no Daniell Albert Yan Bahan Mapsiwa, no Geshwangwa, Pio Katsingwangwa, no Arrivet Uncle, Inga Lana Pasias for Yan Mapsiwa, Ina Dexter Albert Yan Mapsiwa, Ifo Miranda Nutamia Tikwa, Phil Pasias for Yan Mapsiwa. That's Chloe. So that's my Hopi side. I think it's very important to know both of them. So, Yats Daniell Albert Yanishne, also Nishle, Adol Nae Nishniki Kis Ani Nishle, Kenya Ani, Bashashi, Kifani Dashiche, Kakini Dashinelle.
Awesome.
So just a quick introduction of who I am. My name is Daniell Albert. Like I said, I'm both Hopi and Navajo, born and raised in Flagstaff, Arizona. So my whole life, I've been divided between these two cultures of Hopi and Navajo. And a lot of things that you said in the introduction was making me laugh because everything you said was so true of deciding who you are, what's your identity. Because for me, when you go to events or when you go to, school, they always ask, who's Hopi and who's Navajo, or what's your tribe, where do you belong to, basically. And they don't have one that's like, who's mixed or who's half this and who's half that. You kind of have to decide which team you're on, basically.
Carl's mixed. He's Hopi on his Hotvela side, but on his Songopavi side, he's something else.
Well, I think we're all something else out here, so.
And so thank you. Oh, go ahead, Danielle. Go ahead.
I like to thank CNN for something else because now it's just easier to say that these days.
and so, thank you for introducing yourself in the way that you did. I don't think Carl or I have even done that to this point.
Yeah,
we're season 3 deep into the podcast.
That's right. We never introduced ourselves in Hopi.
No, because we wanted to keep our identity secret.
Happy pahan na yan matiwa.
Carl DeAndre yan pahan matiwa. But I think that Danielle, that's probably the most proper Navajo words that have been spoken on this podcast, aside from the chots and the all of the che'ijis that we've been mentioning before. The only words that they taught us when we reached the Navajo schools.
Yeah, I only know che. That's pretty much it. So, and then I just make fun of them for saying that anyway.
And so Danielle,
I heard they have.
Oh, go ahead, Danielle.
I heard they have Rosetta Stone nowadays, so you guys could probably start that.
Rosetta Stone?
Yeah, the it's like an internet way to learn how to speak a language.
Oh yeah. I was taking that Spanish. I was trying to impress a girl when I was working in Hastings. So I tried the Rosetta Stone, but it only gave you a 14-day trial, and it only taught you the basic words like cat and pantalones. I got my gato and the pantalones.
And so Danielle, you kind of started to talk about it a little bit, but I think that I guess from your specific experiences, if you would like to share maybe some of, I guess some of the difficulties that it's been growing up to be both Hopi and Navajo.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us mixed breeds out there have a hard time, like I said, choosing which side you want to be on. But luckily for me, my mom is actually Hopi, so you're kind of default in a way of you're Hopi, and this is the way you have to live. And my dad is very respectful about that. He was like, listen, I understand that it's matrilineal, your mom's Hopi, you're going to learn the Hopi ways, and I'm going to respect it. So I had a really respectable father in that way, but at the same time, I was like, I'm half Navajo too, and I want to respect your culture and your heritage. So the difficulties of that is balancing the two while also being very Hopi at the same time. You don't want to lose that side of you. And those out there saying, you're not Hopi, your mom's Hopi, but you're not full Hopi. You don't count as a Hopi. And that hurts a lot because I am Hopi. I'm not a full breed as everyone else, but I know as much as you. I do the same things as you. So that's mostly the difficult about that.
So when you were growing up, were you made fun of a lot for having two sides of your Navajo and Hopi from other children?
Yeah, it becomes difficult. I mean, my own family does it to me sometimes, just to tease me. When I go out home for dances, I walk into the house and they're all, yes, and I'm like, ew, don't say that. Like, I'm Hopi too. Like, I'm here for a reason. Don't say that. But
they called you
it
Nejoni a lot, huh?
Sometimes I don't let it happen. I kind of just kill it right then and there. Like, I'm here for a reason. I'm Hopi. I'm gonna go get my Piccadilly. Like, I'll prove it to you. Just kidding.
J-Man and I were Hopi on the weekend, so.
Yeah.
So Danielle, I guess from your upbringing on the Hopi side, how much experience did you have learning like the traditional cultural practices of what young women are taught to learn, such as cooking the traditional foods? And did you have that same experience on the Navajo side?
Yes. So obviously I grew up Hopi. I like to explain to people when I meet them, I'm Hopi and Navajo, but I'm raised as a Hopi. And, they sometimes question me, but I'm always like, but I know how to, cook Navajo food. I butchered before, and it gets kind of difficult trying to explain myself to people because I like to say I'm full Hopi and I'm full Navajo. Because on the Hopi side, I did everything that I needed to do. I got initiated. I was given away to, my godmom. And then from there, I grinded corn. So I'm a full woman on the Hopi side. And then on the Navajo side, I did my pinata, I butchered, I grind corn too, I did the Navajo cake. So I'm a full Navajo woman on that side. But I'm just happen to be half Hopi and half Navajo in my quote unquote blood quantum.
So you're 200%?
Yes, exactly. That's what I need to say.
That's awesome, Danielle. So I don't think that probably a whole lot of people who are Hopi and Navajo on both sides really do get to experience what you've experienced on the cultural side of doing all of those obligations and duties on the Hopi side and then doing it the same on the Navajo side. And so I guess, this is a good transitioning segue into like the next question is, what are some of the positives of being a part of both cultures? And, so I guess, when it goes from making pikami to making Navajo cake, you're making the same thing. All you do is you add raisins to the Navajo cake
and sell it at the flea market. I think that's a transition to going there.
I personally like to be mixed because I say I can always flip a switch. I can be Hopi and then I can be Navajo when I want to be, or I can be both. I think it's a very good positive. I think it's almost like a superpower to have because I know the similarities between the two cultures and I know the differences. So when I talk to, when I go out to students or I have my sisters with me or when I'm with my two parents, we talk about these things, the similarities of, the cultures or the clothing or everything like that. But at the same time, there's differences. And majority of the time we talk about the differences, Navajos call it the blue corn tamales, but we call it sliviki. So we're always teasing them, you're trying to steal our recipes. But I think it's a great thing to do because I can just flip a switch on what culture I want to talk about, what things I want to bring up, who I'm talking to. So I think there's a lot of positive things about it.
And Danielle, so I guess you kind of serve as a role model for other younger folks that are experiencing something similar to what you've experienced, because you didn't mention it, but I do know you through ASU, and so you do have your college background, your college degree, and then also you're also involved in numerous other high profile positions, correct? With being involved with the Miss ASU, Indian ASU.
Yeah, so I ran for Miss Indian ASU for 2 years in 2018, 2019, and in 2019, 2020. Or was it the year before? It's already been too long. But the reason why I wanted to run is because I wanted to prove to myself that I knew who I was in cultural identity, because I was worried at the beginning, the first time I ran. I had a lot of anxiety because I kept telling myself I'm not Hopi enough. I'm not going to run because I'm not Hopi enough. I don't speak enough Hopi, so I'm not Hopi enough to run for this title. And a lot of people kept encouraging me, it's okay. You don't know enough Hopi. It's okay that you feel like you're not Hopi, but you need to understand that you are Hopi, and you're going to learn through this journey of who you are. So that's the main reason why I ran. And then the second time I ran, I said, you know what? I'm proud of who I am, and I'm half Hopi and half Navajo. So I'm going to represent that for all of those who are mixed as well.
That's awesome, Danielle.
I used to change up my I used to change up my wardrobe. I would wear my Hopi mata, but I would wear my Navajo belt with it. I would wear my Navajo skirt, but with my Hopi jewelry. So you just kind of have to understand that you just gotta be proud of who you are.
But is it that kind of taboo to mix Hopi traditional dress with a Navajo type of dress? Because some Hopis, they don't believe that you should be doing some sort of mixture of cultures like that. So do you kind of see it as a taboo like that?
Sometimes, I don't go all out. The most I'll do is just wear my belt with my Hopi dress. That's as far as how I'll go. Or sometimes I'll wear my Navajo jewelry with it. I don't like to go too mixed and crazy about it, I know they like to wear their jeans and moccasins. I don't do that. But it just kind of depends on how you are.
That is kind of a good point. And it is a difficult thing to navigate, I think, especially now in the way that things are. And we've mentioned this before on many other previous episodes, the fact that a lot more, I think it's over 50% of our people are now living in the urban areas. And so that when you're living in the urban areas, that sometimes you are disconnected from a lot of the cultural information that the reservation folks are privy to. And so, I think especially with art, you see a lot of the cross mixing, I think, between different tribes. I think mostly Hopi. Sometimes you see it with Navajos incorporating Hopi symbols into their art. And I think now, especially with our younger Hopi folks being more engaged with the powwow scene, that you see a lot of those plains designs that come from the powwow that get mixed into the Hopi art that you see these days. And so, I think that, it's kind of really a difficult thing to kind of figure out as to see what is going to be acceptable and how you, I guess, carry yourself.
Yeah, I remember when I was part of the committee of Miss Indian ASU, I went to my first ever powwow on the ASU campus. And I was lost because as Hopis, we don't really traditionally do powwows.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of an outside thing. And so when I first got there and felt the drum, I was excited, but at the same time, I was so nervous because I didn't know how these things run. And I don't know the format of how these things are done throughout the night and the days and, the open ceremony, the closing ceremonies. it was all new to me. And I remember I got some backlash about it because I was just telling people, it's so different and I've never gone to a powwow before. It's not traditionally something Hopi. And, I got attacked for it. I'm Hopi, I do powwows and blah, blah. I'm like, I understand you do powwows. I'm just saying traditionally we just don't do it. And it's very different for us, for those who've never gone to one before.
It is. And actually, Carl does powwow. He's a chicken dancer. That's the reason why he grew his hair long.
Yeah, I sing that, going to the powwow.
I thought you sang the John Wayne song from Smoke Signals.
Was that John Wayne's teeth? Hey, yeah.
That's why I noticed that in all of your Hopi songs, you have that kind of drawn out sound now that the powwow singers have in all of your tawis.
Yeah, it starts out with that John Wayne's teeth. Hey, yeah.
And so I guess, transitioning, the conversation, because I think that for us, for at least the ideas that we get for the conversational starters for the podcast, that a lot of, some of the ideas that I get, it comes from social media and the fact that, our people are very active on social media, that you see what a lot of those conversations that they have in regards to whether that's culture, native culture, Hopi culture, or even the villages or the reservation. Danielle, what are some, I guess, messages or conversations that you have seen on social media regarding people that do come from multicultural backgrounds or the quote unquote mixed breeds?
A lot I see on social media is mostly, just memes. We like to tease each other, especially for Navajo and Hopi, because they always have that, differences between our land rights and, you're stealing my cookie recipe, you're taking our smoothie recipe. And there's always going to be that kind of tension between the two cultures, but it's more of a playful tension on social media. So, you always see these kind of memes out there, or you see these kind of statuses that are subtweeted towards Navajos or anything like that. I just kind of find it funny. You don't want to take it too serious. You don't want to start anything. But I feel like as mixed breeds, we're so used to that we're not really fazed by it. We just laugh it off as much as you guys do. So I know there are children that are half mixed breed or that are multicultural that resent their parents for making them like that. Are you somewhat in that position, like where you say that, oh, my mom never taught me a full effect of like Hopi, or maybe your dad never taught you the full part of Navajo? Are you like resenting your parents in a way? Not in that aspect. I'm more of like, why am I not full Hopi? Or, it would just been easier if I was just full Hopi. My life would have been a lot easier kind of deal. And I always tease my soul when she comes over, and she's always telling me, go find a Hopi man, go find a Hopi man. And I'm always like, I'm trying, but there's no good Hopi men out there. And I'm like, go find me one, soul, and then we'll have good Hopi babies. And she would just laugh it off. But it's hard out there when you're trying to find someone who is a potential mate, because like you guys said earlier in your podcast in the introduction, that Hopis, if you don't smoke or drink, then you have to look elsewhere. And that's exactly how it is, and it's still like that.
I don't know if
I'm 23 years old, and I'm still having that issue.
I was gonna
being like that.
I was gonna say I don't know if I would trust So'o to be matchmaker, because then she'd bring you a So'os boy like Carl.
I'm a good guy, so I know how to sing very, very beautifully.
He knows how to sing those powwow songs at the right high pitch.
My voice is probably like butter to to all my Kia'a's ears.
So I guess, Carl, what are some messages that you see on social media in regards to people that are multicultural or mixed breeds?
Well, when you go on social media, there are a lot of like the backlashes of how social media works. Like, oh yeah, you're just Navajo. They pick a side. They usually just pick one side, and they never pick, in the middle, or they never pick neutral. They just go ahead and say that, oh, your dad's a Navajo. Then you must be Navajo. Go and do your corn dance or something, whatever then, they make fun of the situation about that. And of course, social media is always,
social media.
Yeah, social media is social media.
I think that for me, when I see the most activity about culture, social media, and, I guess some of these arguments is always during the ceremony times. Like in February, you'll hear a lot of people I guess kind of going back and forth, kind of arguing. And, I think the fact that, some people do they do experience a lot of the negative side of our factory setting perspective. And, I think it really leaves people, I'm not too sure what the term is, but, where you have that anger inside of you, where you're, kind of lashing out. And, I do see people that are multicultural, mostly the Nava-Hopis, people that are part Navajo and Hopi, kind of, getting angry and saying that, just kind of like what Danielle said, that we're just as much Hopi as anybody else, because, we've gone through this experience of, getting Asna and then Wimka and, all of these other experiences that people like you and I have had.
Yeah. But before we move on, let's go ahead and take a quick break for our second sponsor here.
This paid sponsorship was paid for by Justin Villarreal.
Hey, Tom here with Hopi Relief. Hopi Relief is a nonprofit organization based down here in the Valley, where we are providing much-needed supplies to the Hopi Reservation during this COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. Please visit hopirelief.org and find out how you can get involved. Hopi Relief is also an Arizona-recognized charitable tax organization. And please, visit us December 1st on Giving Tuesday. Thank you.
And we're back. And so I guess, really, because when you think about it, when you think about the future of Hopi, is that the fact that I think the way that our economy is, as we talked about in the last episode, that, there are very little homes for people to live out here, is that the trend for our people to move to the urban areas is going to increase, and it's going to continue to increase. And that fact is that you're probably going to see a lot more of our people finding mates that are non-Hopis and creating more of a multicultural society of Hopi. And then, because we all do experience that, experiencing this Hopi life that we enjoy, and the fact that we enjoy it so much that we want our kids to experience it as well. And so, even if you're a Hopi man, you go off and you find a non-Hopi woman, that you still want your kids to have the naming ceremony, that you still want them to experience some form of
your culture,
your culture with your child. And then, going forward and even trying to have them initiate it and all of this other practice. And so, I guess in my perspective, I feel like that is going to continue with the way that our culture is going. So I guess before I ask you, Danielle, a quick question for Carl is, how do you think that impacts our Hopi culture, our Hopi practices, and our Hopi ceremonies?
I mean, in the Kivas, you see a lot of that happening, and you see a lot of Hopi children participating in Hopi ceremonies, but yet their mothers are not Hopi, but yet their fathers are. But it kind of puts you in that position to say, okay, well, we can teach you so much here, but yet we can't teach you a lot of this because of your status of where, or your cultural identity here. Because your mother's not a Hopi, we cannot further on certain teachings, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of becomes a difficult stance, because then, what if we get to a point where nobody has Hopi mothers anymore? And then, what's the standard and practice then? But I guess Danielle, being have experienced both sides. How do you see the future of Hopi, knowing that a lot more of our people are probably going to have similar backgrounds to yours?
Well, actually, a couple of years ago, Arrivey had that issue, and I remember my soul telling me that they were going to put down, I guess, rules of who gets to participate in certain things and who doesn't. And one of those rules was you have to have a Hopi mother, and you have to be at least half Hopi in order for you to go down to the kiva or go do things around the village. And I remember that created a big issue because there is a lot of kids out there who are mixed, and they want to participate. They want to know the Hopi culture. And we have my cousin sister, she's actually half Hopi as well on her dad's side. And so we were having an issue with her going down to the kiva to do butterfly dance practices, and they wouldn't let her in because she wasn't Hopi on her mom's side. And I remember they had to all sit down together. All my dahas, all my guas had to go down there and petition for her to participate and explain that since she was born, we've raised her Hopi and she knows the Hopi ways, and we're trying to raise her to be a Hopi woman. And that was very difficult for my family because as we know it, she's Hopi and she's part of our family, even though her dad is Hopi and her mom's not. And so that created a big issue between our village, and all of a sudden those rules were uplifted because they understood that there's a lot of kids in the village that are mixed. And now they're trying to figure out different ways on how to go around it to where still they want only Hopi kids to participate instead of outsiders. So it is a very hard situation in any village to decide who can do things and who can't.
That's a really good example, Danielle.
Yeah, that is.
Because I think that, for my village down at Munkapi, Lower Munkapi, that they did attempt to do the same thing, that they only tried to allow those that had Hopi mothers to get initiated. And very similar to that there was a huge backlash from the people because a lot of people had grandkids that were part Navajo or part other cultures that were going to get excluded and similar to that. And I think, what for folks that aren't familiar of why I guess we go about practicing it this way is that because within our culture, I think one of the biggest things, especially in regards to our religion, is that we really want the people who are participating in the ceremonies to speak, or at least the very least understand Hopi, our own language, because then, we can't truly carry our ceremonies in the correct way if we're only speaking English.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of at least what our traditional leaders think about, is that we want to do our ceremonies correctly. And it's probably in their perspective that it's only the ones who are quote unquote real Hopis that are going to be the ones that can speak, or at least very least understand the language being spoken. And so I think that that's kind of a real reason as to why the traditional leaders in the more traditional villages are setting these rules in a way to try to make sure that those that participate are on this language list, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and that is that. I guess that is that cultural barrier, or that cultural cultural slide where, if you're not fully understanding of Hopi, then you should not take part in any type of Hopi traditions. And it goes to say with all sorts of cultures out there, whether it's Japanese, Chinese, other Native Americans out there. If you don't understand the language, you cannot participate in any of those traditions out there. So I feel that is one thing that we are kind of doing in that right way, where, yes, you have to understand, you have to make sure that you understand the importance of how Hopi functions, then you can participate in a Hopi ceremony.
Yeah. And Oh, go ahead, Danielle.
I like that too. Between you have to know the Hopi ways, but I don't think kids don't have to prove that they're Hopi. They should be proud that they're Hopi. That's the difference between how I should be run. Maybe have kids introduce themselves in Hopi before they come into the kiva. So that way they're making steps into learning the language. Maybe when you're in the kiva, only the men can talk Hopi to them. So that way they can start understanding these keywords when they're starting to practice or when they get out of the kiva, Start to kind of teach them instead of disciplining them for not knowing Hopi or not being Hopi enough.
That's a good suggestion.
I think that's what should be the change. Yeah.
Yeah. See, in the kivas, we do talk Hopi, but when they nakwai tacos, then it's all Mexican. So we don't really care. So
how do you say?
That's when your Rosetta Stone comes in.
How do you say "hoa" in Spanish, Carl? Arriba.
No, you say "el gato en pantalones." That's pretty much all I know.
Well, we're getting close to time, but Danielle, real quick, can you, I guess, if there's any other things that you would like to share on this topic in regards to quote unquote mixed breeds or Nava-Hopis?
I feel like I said enough for a lot of where I stand. Be proud of who you are, where you come from, and if you are multicultural, learn all your different tribes, learn the similarities between them, learn the differences. Because you're going to be able to be that person, that middle person between those tribes, between all of those different cultures that you represent. And if you come across someone who thinks, oh, you're Native American, oh, they're all the same. No, they're not the same because I'm half Hopi and half Navajo, or I'm half this, I'm part this. And these are the differences and these are the similarities. So you can start educating these people, these non-natives or these other natives, the differences and the similarities, because you are representing all of those cultures in you.
Well,
so just go out there, be proud of who you are.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much, Danielle. We really appreciate it. And so we're there at that.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, for sure. And so we're at time, Carl.
Yes, we are.
And so real quick, before we set off and go about our daily duties, I think that, we'd like to give another shout out to some special folks that really enjoy the podcast, that give us some support. We'd like to welcome Gary Lomayesva.
To
the 30-pack tier of our CJ podcast donorship. And, as usual, we'd like to thank everybody else who has contributed greatly to our podcast. Like to thank Michelle Holden, Rachel Reinhart, Noel Oyahoma, Joyce Hamilton, our boy Millard Gawanyama, and Liara Thompson.
Thank you, all of your monthly, you're our monthly supporter, and thank you for keeping us on, keeping us on the air pretty much.
We greatly appreciate that. And, as usual, if you're not following us on our social media accounts, we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Our numbers are starting to climb in those areas. And I think that, for once in Carl's life, he's actually social media popular.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do want to become a monthly donor or monthly sponsor, go to anchor.fm/CJpodcast85 and donate right today. So it keeps us on the air and it keeps us out of trouble.
Or you can buy Carl a cup of coffee.
Or buy both of us a cup of coffee at buymeacupofcoffee.com/CJpodcast.
And as we're approaching the new year, we're really excited to working on some additional content projects. We mentioned it in our last episode that a video series is going to be coming soon. It's called Us Be These Guys.
So look out for that on YouTube.
And if you follow us on Instagram, I just posted a picture of our brand new set. So you'd take a look out for that on our story. But I guess, for the day, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you again for listening to Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. My name is Carl, and this is my best friend, J-Man.
So long. Quack, quack.